Welcome back, Game of Thrones fans, to this channel's rewrite of the Battle of Winterfell. This will be the final video for this series and will deal with the second half of our climax edits. If you haven't seen the videos leading up to this one, I will leave links in the description below. Just as a quick recap, the Night King has entered the godswood, slaughtered the Ironborn archers within, and then engaged in combat with Jon Snow, who had been waiting for him. Meanwhile, Bran has warged into the dragon Rhaegal and has taken Brienne, Jaime, Beric the Hound, Tormund, and Ed Tollett to fight the White Walkers far outside Winterfell. Now, with all that said, let's get right into the last little bit of edits. Back at Winterfell, Samwell Tarly, having come up from the crypts, will meet Jorah Mormont and fight side by side with him in the battle raging in the Winterfell courtyard. Because our other group of fighters is having success in killing the White Walkers, many of the Whites attacking Winterfell are starting to bust and crumble. As Jorah fights, he will hear wing beats above him too. Looking up, he will smile, seeing Daenerys descend with Drogon. She will have the dragon blast fire onto the Whites, dropping over the castle walls. This will greatly inspire the Winterfell forces too, but as Game of Thrones has taught us well, the happiness won't last long. As Drogon hovers over the courtyard, he will be viciously sideswiped by Viserion, sending Drogon crashing into a tower of Winterfell and Dany plummeting to the ground. As in the Source episode, Viserion's face will be mangled and torn, and blue fire will drip from the gaping holes in his neck and jaw. As Dany falls after being thrown from Drogon, Jorah will dive to catch Daenerys, after which she, Jorah, Sam, and the rest of the Winterfell forces will flee to evade Viserion, who lands in the courtyard. Moving back to the godswood, Jon will be fighting the Night King one-on-one. During this fight, the Night King will constantly be trying to get to Bran, still seated beneath the weirwood tree, but Jon will be maneuvering himself to stay in between them. As the fight continues, Rhaegal will fly to be above the godswood. Bran, still warped inside the dragon, will set his eyes on the Night King, and then released a huge blast of fire, similar to what Drogon did in the Source episode. However, in this rewrite, the Night King will speak, just like the other White Walkers did, causing a massive gust of wind to sweep over the godswood, too cold and too fast for the dragon flames to breach. Bran will continue shooting flames as Rhaegal over and over again, though none of them will make it through. With the dragon above unable to help, Jon will continue his fight with the Night King one-on-one. So this part of the edit stems from my general flabbergastedness with how the Night King survived Drogon's fire in the Source episode. As far as I can recall, nothing in the show validated the Night King being immune to dragon flame. I seriously think the writers pulled this out of their sphincters just to get a cool visual and an evil smirk. Still, I liked the Night King's confrontation with the dragon, so to get the best of both worlds, I decided to have the Night King block the fire with a blizzard made from his own voice, foreshadowed when the White Walkers did the same in my combat edits. In this way, instead of the Night King surviving literal dragon's breath for no reason, we get him employing an actual defensive tactic to save himself. Moving back to the chaos in the Winterfell courtyard, Dany, Sam, and Jorah will be fleeing from an undead Viserion. They will move from one piece of cover to the next, killing Whites and avoiding the dragon fire as they do, but soon realizing that with Drogon incapacitated, there isn't much they can do. Jorah will survey the battlefield and surmise that their only hope of living is to get inside the keep of Winterfell and out of the courtyard. Sam will answer back that there is no way for them to make it inside before the dragon kills them all. Clutching his sword, Jorah will tell Dany to run for the doors of the keep and don't stop running no matter what. He will then look at Sam and tell him that he must protect Dany with his life. Before Dany can question Jorah on what he means, Jorah will leap from behind the cover and draw the dragon's attention. He will shout for Dany and Sam to go make their sprint towards the keep. Dany will scream and struggle to get back to Jorah, but Sam will drag her away. As the two enter the keep of Winterfell, the last thing Dany will see is Jorah stand his ground in front of Viserion, release a loud battle cry like the proud northerner he is, and then finally be consumed by blue dragon fire. Though horrifying, there won't be any time for Dany to dwell on what she just saw either. Inside the keep of Winterfell, Whites will focus their attention on the pair that just entered. Sam will step in front of Daenerys, wielding Heartsbane to attack the approaching Whites. And just as in the Source episode, Dany will find a dragon-class sword on the ground and try as best as she can to fight. So, going into some detail about why I chose these specific edits for this scene, it all comes down to what I thought the Source episode did well. I considered the return of undead Viserion to be an excellent decision, along with Jorah dying to protect Dany, something perfect for his character. My goal became to take those elements that worked and integrate them with the edits I've made so far. With Jon fighting the Night King, he obviously wouldn't be able to face off against Viserion as in the source episode, so that allowed the opportunity for Jorah not only to take his place, but to still die protecting Dany. I also really like the inclusion of Sam being involved, because where in the source episode he was sobbing while laying on a couch of zombies, in this edit he is actively involved in the combat with agency and has a reason to fight. Plus, it's a nice full circle moment, since during the intro edits, Dany thought that Missandei would be the one that needed Sam's protection, where now she is the one being protected by Sam. And with Sam and Dany both in the keep, all of our main characters are now involved in personal conflict, and it's also conflict that seems to be completely unfavorable. Our group of characters fighting the White Walkers are slowly starting to be overtaken and surrounded. The horde of whites coming into the crypts is unending, pushing the revived Starks to the point of breaking. Sam and Dany have their backs against the wall, while Viserion ravages what little forces remain in the Winterfell courtyard. And of course, Jon will be locked in a sword fight with the Night King that's looking more and more like he cannot win. He and the Night King will clash weapons, causing Jon to give ground, being driven closer to Bran every moment, who still sits underneath the weirwood tree. Rhaegal, above the godswood, being warged by Bran, will continue to try to breathe fire down onto the Night King, but the frigid wind rushing over the godswood will stop it every time. Jon will have moved to be directly in front of Bran, exhausted and short of breath. The Night King will loom over him, completely unfazed, weapon in hand. He will give Jon a long look, then raise up his arm for the final slash. Just as he is about to swing down, Bran will send Rhaegal diving past the blizzard winds swirling over the godswood and bite down onto the Night King's arm before he can strike. Rhaegal's face and wings will be covered in ice, but his jaws will have clamped onto the Night King's sword arm, completely immobilizing it. Seeing this, Jon will take his chance and rise up with Longclaw. As Jon swings down though, the Night King will turn his head and catch Jon's arm with his free hand. He will grip Jon's wrist so hard that the bones can be heard snapping. With Rhaegal on the Night King's left arm, Jon will grab onto the Night King's right arm, then look up at the weirwood branches directly above them and yell, "Arya." The leaves will rustle, and then after a moment, release Arya Stark, falling from above with the Valyrian steel dagger in her hand. The Night King will move to avoid her, but with Rhaegal and Jon holding both his arms, there is no way for him to block, and nowhere for him to move. Arya will fall upon the Night King, plunging the Valyrian steel dagger straight between his eyes. Just as in the source episode, the Night King will burst along with all the White Walkers and Whites, signaling the finale of the Battle of Winterfell. So let's run through this scene, because there's a lot to unpack. As much as I love the idea of Jon fighting the Night King and dealing the finishing blow, I will always stand by my rule of trying to remain as close to the source material as possible. To achieve that, I needed to have Arya kill the Night King, but also do it in a way that seemed less contrived and nonsensical than what the source episode presented. Basically, what I decided was to take this idea of Jon being the chosen one and turn it on its head. Yes, his story is centered around the Night King and the White Walkers, but what these enemies really represent narratively is a force so great that humanity will have to come together to defeat it. Instead of having Jon kill the Night King all by himself, I wanted to run with this theme of unity and connection. Even as the chosen one, Jon needs help. Arya and Bran, his family, was right there alongside him. None of them could have done it alone, but together they were able to prevail. And again, even though I personally wouldn't have killed the Night King so early in the season, I thought that the Starks coming together as a family would be the best ending edit to make to this episode. With this ending, I feel like everybody wins too. Bran isn't useless anymore, Jon faces the Night King, and Arya's surprise attack is much more justified and realistic. Now, in an attempt to be as objective as possible, the biggest problem that I have with this edit is my inability to find a way for Beric Dondarrion to meaningfully die. The show made it very clear that he was revived as many times as he was for a reason, yet the actual purpose the show gives was so that Arya could be led to Melisandre. While I find this to be incredibly weak, I also couldn't come up with a character-specific moment that would really give a good end to his arc. That is why I had him pair up with the Hound and fight the White Walkers outside Winterfell. If any of you listening have some ideas on how to handle Beric, please leave a comment below. I would love to hear them. Also, if you have any questions about my editing process or how I made my decisions, feel free to comment with those too. This series was a lot of fun, though absolutely exhausting because I've never put out this many videos this fast. Still, it was a pleasure, and as always, I will talk to you all again soon.